Alright, I've left the last of the tools here is the spot healing brush, patch tool, and red eye tool. So we're just going to go over these fairly quickly. Clone tool was sort of the original tool, and if you remember, for the clone tool we hit Alt to set a target spot. I'll just make my brush a little larger here. If I hit Alt and then I paint, I can create a third eye or whatever I want to do. So I'm using Alt as my anchor spot, and then the clone tool just copies everything it sees there. That's sort of the original tool that started all of these healing brushes. If we look at something like the modes, the one I use sometimes is lighten. It's kind of nice because you can take, not a lot of issues here, but so if I looked at the little bit of a wrinkle here, I can just copy or set an anchor point down here. And what it's going to do when it's in the lighten mode is it's going to copy the lighter pixels onto the darker ones here. So you can see how that's copying that over. And what that does is it effectively removes the wrinkle without copying too much of the other material. You'll notice there is a hard line here. So that was a little overkill. And again, then you just play with your opacity, move it back and forth, and find the right sort of mix. Something like that. You can move that around, soften up. And that's one way of lightening wrinkles. This young lady doesn't have very many, so it's not a big deal. I might use it under the eye here. Something like that. That's probably too much. You have to be very careful that you don't overdo any of these types of adjustments. So I'll go back in here. Maybe I'll just lighten it a little bit, just like that. Okay, nothing major, but if we go back to the original, to where I was, it just takes a little bit out. And when we back up, and then I do the same thing, just a little bit of a change, softens it a little bit. So that's using the clone tool either with normal mode or lighten mode just to lighten skin tones. So the clone tool grew into something called the healing brush tool, and it, again, you have to use an anchor. It's wonderful for taking out very small spots. So if I set my anchor here, move over this discoloration, click, and it not only copies the texture a little bit, but it kind of blends it together. It's a smart tool. What I like to think of is it does a few calculations to try and blend what your mix or the area you're sampling from and the new area together. So it's great for any kind of small discoloration. If you make it too large though, and I'll show you what happens, I'm going to sample, let's sample from this side, hit my anchor, click, move over here, and hit it. Not bad. There's still some texture. It's made a pretty good decision there. Sometimes it gets a little wonky. Of course, just because I need to do it, it won't now, but something like that. You can see it doesn't make a very good calculation, so that would be an inappropriate use of the healing tool. And again, you can go sampled or patterned. You can choose from different patterns. A line sample means every time you click, so if I set my anchor point here, oops, I don't want to be on pattern. Let's get off that. Every time I set my anchor, it's going to sample from that spot, regardless of where I go, or it's supposed to be. No, pardon me, aligned follows it. That's what it does. Unaligned leaves it alone without checking the aligned. So now when I set my anchor spot, I'm always going to be, and I'll show you with the, see how it follows the nose ring. So if I click there, even if I move up here, the nose ring is still locked in. So by leaving that checked off, it always samples where the nose ring was. So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit here. If I click on align sample, and now I'll click on the nose ring, I'll move over here, there's the nose ring, but if I move up, you'll notice my sampling spot is actually moving up with it. It's on right about the eye as well. Okay, so just that works with the clone tool as well. And let's do the last two here. Healing brush or spot healing tool. This one I kind of like. It's got a few more options. Proximity match, create texture, content aware. I think it's just a smarter version. Okay, so if I haven't really played with it that much, oops. I don't even have to sample. That's kind of nice. I just hit the spot and it makes a decision. Oh, that's kind of a neat tool. Hey, you learn something new every day. So this one just looks and goes click. You don't even have to set an anchor. So that's a fast way to get rid of discolorations. Now I'm not going to do all the freckles here, but it looks like it's doing a pretty good job. Nice. Learned something new. And lastly is the patch tool. I won't bother with red eye. The patch tool is a little weird because you actually have to draw a selection. So you have two choices, source and destination. So if I drag a selection around this cheek. Okay, notice it glows with the little moving ants. And now I can drag this over. Okay, and notice it's going to fill that spot with wherever I drag the selection. Okay, so that's called source. So if I put the eye there, it's going to lay the patch down on the eye. Looks kind of creepy. Let me just go back to the beginning here. So destination works if I circle this and now I try and drag it. I'm actually taking it and I'm placing it over something, so I could place it over her eye and it applies it to the eye. So two different patches, one source, one destination. Just takes a little getting used to playing with those. And those are the last of the tools for the top two bars. I think we've covered most of them. Red eye tool, just another fancy way of getting red eye. This person doesn't have red eye, so I can't even show you. And if I was going to use those tools on this one, I would probably be softening the, let me go to clone. I would be softening a little bit of the eyes here. I'd definitely be cleaning up the hair, so I would crank this up and I would get rid of some of the hair that's stray. Make sure I got a nice white background. There are other ways to do it. This is just one way. That's again the joy of Photoshop, is there's a whole bunch of different ways to do this. And I'm just gonna get it really close. Not enough to be perfect. The one thing you want to avoid if you're photoshopping hair, I'll show you. I put a hard edge on this. Is going right around someone's head. Too much, it starts to look kind of like a helmet. So I always find I want at least a little bit. Oops, I just go to normal here. I want to do a little bit of hardness and just kind of feather that as we move. So just something like that, just so there's a little bit of a soft edge there. And that might be a little too much, but you can see the difference. I'm going to back that last one off. And yeah, that's using your clone tool to help clean up hair, faces. You can also use your healing brush, patch tool, a whole bunch of different options. You really just have to find what you're comfortable with and what you can remember. And there, yeah, check it out.